Hi, guys. Welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today is another fantastic day for an interview. And it is actually, because it is, I've given it a little bit of a break due to circumstances. I haven't had an interview for a week now, and I feel sort of, some empty space there. Need to fill that with some really, really, really cool people. And I have today is just the perfect day for that because I've got Dai Manuel. Dai is a man who's a champion of change, and he is a dad. He's dating his wife. He is a man who lives very intentionally and who tries to live a life that's worthwhile living. And that in its own right is one of the most beautiful challenges. I've only come around to that kind of style of living 8 years ago. He is a man, however, who is maybe a little bit longer on the path. And I want to figure out, how the hell do you become a champion of change? So welcome to the show, Dai Manuel.
Thank you, Stefan. It's a pleasure, and I know we've been playing a little bit of tag, and I've had to reschedule a couple times, and I'm just like, but I've been looking forward to this conversation. As we were saying before we even hit record today, I just really appreciate creators like yourself that are also facilitating safe spaces for these types of conversations to happen, and because I think we need more of that, because all of us have great stories. I mean, there's always a lot of drama in them, and there's a lot of change and change of perspective, but more importantly, that internal change that we all tend to go through when we get through that really hard stuff. And anyways, I'm just excited to be here. Thank you.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's an honor for me to have you. Dai, you just said it so beautifully. There is change and there's change of perspective. So, and that change of perspective often leads to the change in ourselves. And that is the weird, strange thing, isn't it? We are sometimes so engrossed. Guys, before we just started here in the recording, Dai asked me, hey, how was your week been? And I said, well, I might as well be honest. And it was actually a shit start of the week. And there was some negative news that really brought me down and set me in a quick downward spiral spin to the kind of pity party kind of thing. And then having slept on things and regrouping in the cold light of day, I realized actually the bad news is not so bad after all. So what happened there? I changed my perspective. And just looking at things differently, I changed my life by actually not writing the email that I then forever will regret, or, all those kind of things. So it's cool. So there's already one big key message to take home, guys. It's all up to you. How you get to something, how to negotiate the punches that life throws at you.
But I have to say, Stefan, I just real quickly there, just to acknowledge you. I mean, just the fact that you just reminded all of us that idea of, as challenging as things can be in the moment when it first happens, we first learn of whatever that thing is that's challenging us emotionally, physically, spiritually, intellectually, like whatever, right? Like you taking the space for yourself to even sleep on it one extra night, because how many of us have done the impulsive email or the text message or, like when we're in it, right? When you're heated and you're triggered, it's like, and then we end up doing something that we regret. And so I just want to applaud you. Thanks for the reminder, because that little extra space, even that one extra night, right? To look at things with fresh eyes, the new morning, and usually by then, hopefully the emotions have simmered down a little bit, right? So
exactly.
Anyways, thanks for the example.
No, I mean, I'm a hothead. I mean, please, I have to admit that I was the worst, especially when I was drinking. My God, I had a hair trigger. But what about you? Are you a hothead?
So you'll like this example. I can be bombastic. And what I mean by bombastic is it's amazing. I have a very high tolerance, except for when it comes to incompetence and ignorance. Like, it's amazing how quickly my patience evaporates when I encounter these types of situations where I'm just like, did you really just say that out loud? Those moments, but also, in my background with some of the businesses I've operated, I've had some larger teams to really manage and support. And I'm a big fan of training, because we know we to increase people's base knowledge and skills, it takes teaching, right? And mentorship and support. But there comes a point where, if you've had to say the same thing to somebody 2, 3, 4 times, and it's just not sticking, it's like, that's where I get a little bit impatient. Okay, I'll be honest. And it's unfortunate, because the people that are closest to me seem to have the shortest fuses. And I think we all sort of face that. It's often our family members that often get the best of us, but can also get the worst of us really quickly, because we're so comfortable with them that sometimes that wall is very short. So we can get over it pretty quick. And I've tried to be really mindful, especially the last decade, of trying to elongate the fuse or not light it at all, especially when it comes to family and the people that are closest to me, because that always makes me feel the most regretful, is when I get to that place, especially with people I really, really care about, because I'm like, why would I treat them like that? As my wife says, would you treat your best friend the way you just treated us? And to be fair, no, I wouldn't. And she's also, my wife's awesome, right? She'll be like, oh, what if we had a 24/7, literally a camera crew following us around like a reality show? Would you be acting the way that you're acting right now? Like, it's just those little subtle questions, right? Like, you just put your frame of mind in that. It's like, no, if I'm honest, I wouldn't be acting like that. If I had cameras on me right now, would I be doing what I'm doing? No, of course not. And so it's that little self-check that sometimes is all what we need to have a quick reset and a shift of perspective very, very fast, right?
Now that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I throw you a counter argument, because for us, it's a little, in my relationship with my gorgeous wife, it's a bit other way around. Often enough, Lisa doesn't show her nicest side. Let's put it like that. And she says, look, I've got this pent up frustration sitting in me, and you are the safest person that I can vent to. And sometimes it's just that I need to get this aggression out. And yes, maybe I'm focusing it on you, but I love you. And then you think, oh, fuck, what do you do with that? And it's just, and I've taken to accept that, at least when I'm strong, I have no problem with that. I just look at her and think, that's not really what is going on, darling. Tell me the truth. And then she comes out with really what is bothering her, rather than if I don't know what I did wrong, quotation mark, in that moment in time, when she felt safe to actually let her aggression out. So it's a bizarre tango that is sometimes being performed, in which you are being led more often than you're the leader. So what do you do with that? I mean, what do you do with times when people go through hard times and they just need to vent? How do you deal with that?
I think it's a good question. I guess I always try to put myself in that perspective, right? Like when I think about times when I felt most frustrated or anxious or maybe overwhelmed, even depressed, as I've dealt with a lot of these mental health perspectives or challenges at various periods of my life, and I know I'll continue to deal with those at various periods throughout the rest of my life. I mean, it's a given, right? Like we have all our highs, we have our lows, but we have to remember we're all resilient. It's in our DNA. As human beings, we are very resilient to the core. And as climate change experts will maintain, we're probably too resilient at times, based on we got 8 billion of us across the planet. But we have to remember we're capable to live through hard things. However, there is that internal perspective that ultimately is, in my opinion, the most important perspective, our perspective ourselves, that and our own worldview is shifted or tainted or tinted, through that worldview. And but I know that people that are closest to me, there's times, right, Stefan, where we get upset and we do want to share that, to get it out of us, because if we just pent it up and hold on to it, I've been there before. And that is my default. I am naturally introverted, but I choose to work as an extrovert. But because I'm naturally introverted, I don't share a lot about that stuff, and that was something that was modeled to me from my father and other men in my family and life. And, so it's something I'm fighting against, right? I'm trying to rewire myself to be more open, to be more vulnerable, to be allowed to share a bit more openly. So I don't get to that place where I'm like, going to blow a fuse, and lose it, because I hate it when I get there. I just feel like I've just lost control, and I'm like, I'm better than that. I don't need to do that. Like, because really sometimes, especially when it's the smallest of things, right, Stefan? When it's the smallest of things that set you off, it's like, oh boy, I need a break, I need to do something. I need my own internal intervention right now to get myself back into a more positive place. And,
exactly.
So anyways, yeah.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. But these are the skills that we two have finally began to master. I'm nowhere close to mastering. What is a master of that? That would be maybe I don't know. Even I don't know. There is someone in this world who actually has done that. So because
Dalai Lama, maybe,
but only just maybe. I'm sure there's a dark side to him too. Okay, there is. We cannot all be on this saccharine, high, beautiful, gorgeous. No, that is first of all, that is the wrong imagination. Anyhow, when we talk about calm and in ourselves, we're not talking we're high, we're bouncing, we're cool, we're. And I loved it how you put it by you described yourself that you're an introvert, but you choose to work as an extrovert. It's actually very much the same with me. I'm very happy to be alone. I'm very happy to be just by myself, quite happy. I don't need to talk, okay? But when it comes to performing my jobs, as an anesthetist, I want to be out there at the right time and exude confidence and basically help others to go through a hard time. Surgery is a hard time. Everyone is anxious. So I choose my roles and I choose my behaviors for those. And that's nice. And choosing behaviors is really that. It is a choice. Yeah. So I figured out who I want to be when I'm at work. What took me much longer was who I wanted to be as a man. That was quite a story there, or a lengthy story, which I won't bore you with. But bottom line is, I'm only just now figuring that out. So, Dai, who do you want to be when you grow up?
I was going to say stuff. I was like, what? You can go to school to learn how to be a man? What's up?
Exactly.
Where do I get that degree? Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And I feel the same way. It's one of those weird things where, we just grow up and we just do our best, but we end up following, those that are closest to us, typically, that association, right? Those role models, if you will, that enter into our lives at certain periods. And not all of the time are role models positive, right? And I think we all default, if you're a role model, it must be a positive influence. It's like, oh no, if I tell you a bit about my story, a lot of the people I've associated, it's not necessarily a positive influence, but yet I role model those behaviors because they were what I thought was okay, and so that question you just asked about, like, what kind of man do you want to be, or did you think you want to be? Like, I'm still figuring that out. I'm still trying to figure it out. But I know for me, being someone of integrity, being someone that is transparent, that's honest, that can be vulnerable when it's appropriate. You know what I mean? Like I'm not vulnerable for the shock and awe of it, or to say, hey, look at me. I'm vulnerable to deepen connections and understanding, right? Like, that's why I want to be vulnerable, is to allow other people to be vulnerable in return. And that's how friendships are formed. That's how trust is formed. I mean, people are like, oh, why do you talk about vulnerability like that? And I'm like, well, it's just a skill like any other skill. You just got to learn how to tap into it and realize it's going to be okay. But you can't just be vulnerable with anybody. Not everybody deserves our vulnerability. Like, it's earned, but you think about any relationship we've ever had of significance, it always starts from a place of vulnerability. We open up, we share a little bit about ourselves, our upbringing, our belief systems. Then now they feel comfortable to share a little bit about theirs. And then it deepens from there. And I know for myself, when it comes to this question that you just asked, like, well, what kind of man did you want to grow up to be? Well, those are similar questions. I still have conversations with some other very, let's just say, engaged men in this conversation. And that's where the power of men's groups and men's circles can really be powerful for us all, because it creates a safe container for us to explore these types of conversations and see what does other people think, what's working for them, what's not working for them. And it's this collaborative journey that we're all on, because we're all just trying to figure it out, and I mean, what about you, Stefan? Like when you thought about the kind of man you wanted to be, like what was that? Like what were some of the highlights, some of the values that you wanted to espouse?
You announced them in the same sentence as I would have used: integrity, transparency, humility. Because there were many times in my life when my active behaviors were actually reflecting the exact opposite. I was a man who I was a man of the 80s, and I lived up to the anti-heroes of that time, the Mel Gibson and Lethal Weapon, Bruce Willis and Die Hard. Okay, those kind of broken men, broken heroes, drinking, living hard lives, kind of a thing. And my stepfather or my biological father, they showed me nothing different. It was all that kind of thing. So I molded my own hero in my mind and then tried to live up to it. And I was very good in it. So let's give it credit where it is. I was very good in not being transparent, of having many women, of having lots of social life, quotation mark. And it was what it was. It was the fun times at times the darkish times. It was what it was. There was lots of trauma there that not necessarily I was responsible for, but still life dished it up. So I can't do anything about that. These were the influences I had. These was the development that I took. And so I had this energy to want to be someone. And I focused on it and I achieved it. I became very good in it. Yeah. It's just not nowadays, when I look back, it's just not the guy I want to be now. That's for sure. But I was very good in that role. I was a go-getter as far as that is concerned. So good. But at some stage in your life, you have to say, well, what did you really do? And essentially, my behaviors were all focused on escaping my reality, escaping my trauma. I was working hard, which is great as a student, which is great at school, which is great when you become an anesthetist. I was working, and I did crazy hours. And then I did research, and then I did that, pure workaholic. And then when I couldn't work anymore, then I drank to relax. And that gave me a second wind. So give me 2 free glasses of wine and suddenly, oh yes, great. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Let's clean up the garage. Yes. And you think, oh, for fuck's sake. And then you've got 2 hours sleep and you go back to the workaholic. So there was never any time that I left myself to actually reflect, to actually think. I put myself into a hamster wheel and I pushed the fast forward button on the hamster wheel. I was, and it was crazy. But it was what it was. It made me a doctor. It also led to burnouts, multiple burnouts in my life. Oh, yeah. So, and we are very good in that. I'm a man who sometimes doesn't make a mistake twice. I do it 4 or 5 times to just make sure that I actually get the lesson. So you know, that's me.
Oh gosh, yeah. I'm like, oh gosh, me too. Okay, good. I'm not alone in this one, you know.
Exactly. So therefore, that was my past. So I've nowadays learned that this is a choice. This is a choice to be on that hamster wheel, and therefore I say so often, please stop whatever you're doing. That's what I say to my patients. My patients, they come in, I'm an anesthetist, so let's say they have had their accident, their shoulder rotator cuff is done, and they are typical physically active men who define themselves with their physical abilities, and now they basically have a chicken wing there and can't do a thing with it. And we have often these discussions about anesthesia, how we do the surgery, etc. But then I also say, hey, look, who do you want to be when you grow up? And people often say, hey, what do you mean? Your life is reset now, man. For 3 months, you will not be working because it takes 6 weeks to heal the rotator cuff, 6 weeks to learn how to use your arm again. So 3 months. When was the last time you have had 3 months off to actually see who you are. And often enough, you see the light going on, ping. And some people who are ready to hear the message. Other people, no, I need to work. And that is it. So, I mean, are you, what was your journey? So I've just shared a little bit of mine. Okay. I show you mine, you show me yours, kind of thing. So come on, brother. I mean, how did you come to that point that you wanted to be this open, honest man full of integrity?
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing, because that's what it is, right? I find it interesting, this ability as men to open up. Like, we all have that in us. It's just, it's not done frequently because largely how we were raised and what was role model and what we believe to be okay or not okay. I mean, there's a lot of cliches and stereotypes that we're trying to work past, right? Like for me, it was like, men don't cry. We don't emote. Unless it's anger. It's like anger, sure, you can show that, but anything else, no, right? And so I know, because of my inability to express myself fully, and into my teen years, dealing with, I was morbidly obese as a teenager, and that created a lot of mental health challenges for myself as well as physical health. But I went through a period of change from age 16 to 18 and released that weight and developed a new lifestyle. But it took about 2 years to realize those changes. But still, through those changes, I was struggling, mentally, and because I still wasn't able to shake this belief that I was still that kid that was obese, that was the one that was the butt of the jokes, that was not desirable, and I really didn't see myself as being someone of much value. And when we find ourselves in that place, it doesn't matter what age we're at. It's not a fun place to be, and when you're coming from that place where you don't feel that there's any value, it's really to feel that you have any meaning either, or purpose to life. And that in itself is also very scary, because you have no direction at that point. Purpose, meaning, it does give us direction. It doesn't tell us exactly where we're headed, but it at least gives us direction, sort of like a North Star, right? Like, it just gives us direction. Well, that's north somewhere. That way I want to go. And I find with purpose and meaning, when we really feel connected with that, man, it's a lot easier to just get excited and to do the right things. Right. And
so true. But when you were that 18-year-old kid who's just transforming with all the insecurities, with all the core beliefs that you didn't even know were laid down as a young child, the core beliefs of, you probably thought, I will forever be fat. I will forever be worthless. Absolutely. And wherever that came from. But how do you transform? How do you become this agent of change?
Well, so here's the funny thing, right? So I figured out how to make those physical changes early on, because I learned, if I change how I eat, just focus on eating to thrive, not just simply survive day to day, and change sort of the quality of food and the volume of food I was eating. And then also just started to move my body a bit more, so that was enough to start to create some very positive changes for myself, especially if I was consistent with it enough. And, it's not rocket science here. I'm giving people the secret sauce here for physical change, right? But the neat thing is, once we change ourselves physically, I noticed that I did start to see myself a little bit differently. But to be fair, and Stefan, I'm being perfectly transparent here, I realized that my social anxiety and some of those negative thoughts I had of myself, I wasn't working on those. I was working on the outside, because all I wanted, and people ask me, what was your main motivation for that as a teenager? I'm like, I wanted a girlfriend, I did. I wanted somebody to want me, It was alcohol. Okay. I discovered alcohol. I got in with a certain group of people, and I realized if I had a few drinks, all of a sudden this introverted me could become extroverted. And all of a sudden people were inviting me to do things. I had girls taking an interest in me. And for me, it was instantly, it's because I'm turning into this different person when I drink. That's the person everybody wants to hang out with. And even in my TEDx talk last year, I refer to that person as Fun Guy Dai, because that was my nickname. It was Fun Guy Dai, Fun Guy Dai's here, and I'm a very jovial drinker. That's what I was. I was always happy. I was full of energy, full of life of the party. People liked to hang out, liked to party with me. And I became that was the character that I believed everybody wanted me to be. Not necessarily the person I wanted to be, but I was what everybody seemed to resonate with and always wanted to hang out with. And so all of a sudden I started to perceive that other person, that other version of me, as the valuable version of me. That's a slippery slope, as we all know. You start I kept drinking, and that became my normal, my stress reliever. It became my way of dealing with my anxiety. If I want to meet new people, it just, even when I met my wife, it was under that pretense, let's go have a couple of drinks together, and we developed that relationship. And then, even while I was raising my kids up until they were 4 and 6 years old, my drinking was progressively getting more and more intense. It wasn't just from the social side, it was now me also drinking by myself at times to relieve my stress, my anxiety. And then, it gets to a place where you can't live the two lives anymore. I couldn't live both lives. I was failing pretty large. And that was at 32, 33 years of age, where I finally said, I can't do this anymore. I got to make some big changes. And the only thing that was my saving grace, Stefan, was the fact that because I had had such a significant transformation as a teenager, instinctively within me, I already had a belief that I can do change. I've done it before. I should be able to do it again. So there was that sort of inner belief that I think I can do this. And I wasn't 100% confident, of course, but I did believe that I could change. And that's the thing I always try to remind people is we've all been through hard stuff at certain times. And we've gone through lots of changes in our lives. We're constantly, with every breath of air that goes into our lungs, we're changing, every breath of air, right? I inhale some more oxygen, some more cellular metabolism starts to happen. My body's changing. Cells are dying and being replaced. Hair, skin, and nails is growing. We're changing all the time. But some of these psychological and emotional changes, they might take a lifetime, right? And so they're not necessarily, we see them right then and there. And similar with physical changes, when people put weight on, it's like if we went out for one fast food meal and all of a sudden we put on 20 pounds because of that one Big Mac meal, I think people would choose to eat differently. But because it doesn't happen instantly, and it happens over a period of time, people just don't really resonate or register that change is happening. So I had the belief that I could change. Didn't make it easy by any means. And the only reason why this happened, Stefan, if I can be perfectly frank, my wife asked me a question while we were discussing what life would look like for us to co-parent our kids together. Basically, we were talking about separating after 10 years. And because it wasn't a safe environment for my kids to be raised in anymore. And what I mean by safe, it just wasn't a supporting environment. Even though I was fun guy Dai, I'm a nice guy, I'm a nice drunk, I'm not mean, I'm not violent, I don't do anything along those lines. However, I wasn't present. I wasn't there. I was choosing to forego family responsibility for another drink or to hang out with the guys, to go hang out on the 19th green after a round of golf, right? Go watch another UFC with my buddies at the pub instead of being home with my family. I was choosing alcohol over my family. I was valuing that, my relationship or my perception with my friends as fun guy Dai over family man Dai. But I wanted to be family man Dai. That's where all the value was. That's who, when you ask me, who did I envision myself being when I grow up? Well, I envisioned myself being an amazing father, being a very engaged and supporting and loving husband, being a stand-up community member, being someone that could help others facilitate big changes to make life better. That's who I believed I was. And yet every opportunity I was showing up as the fun guy Dai. So when we talk about cognitive dissonance, oh my gosh, I was living in this vortex of me just being very unhappy, very dissatisfied. And my wife asked me a question, and then I'd like to hear your thoughts on this question. But she asked me, Dai, are you being the type of man that you would want to marry your daughters?
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Well, it didn't feel very nice at the time. If I'm perfectly frank, I was like, oh my gosh, I was speechless. And someone that's worked in sales and myself, for about 20 years of my adult life, I've always been pretty good at handling objections and dealing with tough conversations. But I had nothing, Stefan. I had nothing. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't defend myself because there was nothing to defend. She was right. And that's when I knew, I got to make some changes here. I got to make some really big changes.
Oh, wow. I want to meet that girl. I want to meet
fiery
your wife.
redhead. Let's put it that way. Like if that says anything.
Okay. Now hang on. That doesn't. Yeah. You don't just wake up one day with those insights. There must be her own story. And this is probably the wrong place, and you're the wrong man to tell her story, because every woman, hey, nay, you shut up. You can talk about anything on your shows, Dai, but you don't talk about me. So I'll take that for granted. But it takes two to tango. It takes a lot of darkness for you to desire the light so much that you actually create a change in yourself. And so she must have gone through that. She will have gone through her own journey there. Was she drinking too at that stage?
No, she's a very, she could have a glass of wine and nurse it all night. Like, she's never been a drinker.
Interesting.
Where I am, and I'm also the kind of guy, like, I like the buzz. I drink for the buzz. Exactly. And then I get to the buzz, and then I'd always go beyond. I wouldn't stop there. I'd go beyond. And so it just, it was tough, and created a lot of big inconsistencies in my life. And because I'm also someone that has a very well-established, let's just say, persona or awareness in the health and wellness space, So here I am on one side of the fence, talking and supporting people with massive lifestyle, health changes, mindset changes. And so, when they talk about imposter syndrome, holy smokes, I always believed that my picture was in the dictionary beside that, like, it's got to have me there. I've got to be the guy that they're referring to when they talk about this concept. Yep. And, and that day, it was amazing. I sat her down and the kids down right after she asked me that question, and after we had a little bit more conversation, and I made a commitment, because I knew that this is going to be the last chance. This is it. This is the last chance. And believe me, my wife had given me plenty of chances. I was very good at asking for forgiveness rather than begging for permission, or however they say that statement. But, that was just who I was. I would just do it and then try to make up for it for the next week after the fact. And, I made a commitment to them. I said, to my kids, they were 4 and 6 years old at the time, my 2 daughters, and Christy and I had been together for about a decade at this point. And, we had this conversation. She asked me that question. I realized that if I don't make this final change now and really maintain and stick to the change, because now I was actually at a place where I wanted to make a change. Like, before that, it was, we always have those ideas, right? And we will have those awful nights. You know what those are like. It starts out like a great night, and we wake up the next day and we're like, I don't remember exactly what I did, but I know it's probably something I should regret. And, I won't do that again. I won't drink again. I'm going to take a break from drinking now. I made myself those promises all the time. I was never serious about the commitment, about the change. And so I said to my family, I was like, I'm going to go 1 year without any drinking.
Wow.
Now, my 6-year-old at the time, she's looking up from the couch and she's like, okay, so no pop, no juice, like, right away she's thinking like no beverages at all. And I'm like, no, adult beverages, the adult drinks, no adult drinks. And so, beer and wine. Okay. So once we got that clear, because that was my belief, up to that point, I had never done more than 30 days without drinking since the time I was about 17, 18 years old. So this is, 15 years of my adult life. It was a normal, me drinking multiple times a week, sometimes more, sometimes a little less, but that was just it. It was a habit very deeply ingrained in me. It was my way of coping with stress, anxiety, overwhelm. And here I am saying, I'm going to go 1 year, no drinking. And I got about a month in, and holy crap, it was hard. I realized, like, what, I can't do this on my own. Like, it's just me being like at this place of saying, you know what, I'm just going to stop doing it. Because I believe that, at 15 years old, I was like, I want to get healthy. I was able to do those changes, and I did a lot of them on my own. So here I was believing falsely, because I didn't want to tell anybody about my struggles. Sure. I was like, I'll just do it on my own. About a month and a half in, I was like, I can't do this because I don't know how to function. I don't. In my circle of influence, those friends that were all drinkers, they didn't know how to deal with me either. Like, none of them wanted to have the conversation with me. Like, it was hard. And thankfully for my wife, I really opened up to her. And this is really the first time I was truly, authentically transparent and open and honest with how I was feeling with my wife. I got to realize 10 years in our relationship, this is the first time I was really opening up, like truly opening up. Yeah. And yes, it was cathartic. It was scary. It was a bit overwhelming, but it allowed me to start the healing process. And it allowed I let her in to truly support me. And, and after that, I got a psychiatrist that I worked with for about 3 months. And I worked with a relationships counselor for about 3-4 months. And that 12 months of that commitment to really just no alcohol, just work on me, figure out how to work through some of this old trauma that I obviously haven't worked through, and I got to the place at the end of the year. It was wild. Okay. It was wild because the last 3 or 4 months were a lot of fun. I was like, I wasn't even thinking about alcohol. Like I could get around people. They could be drinking. I had no desire. And, then my wife, at the end of that year, she's like, hey, do you want to celebrate? Should we share a glass of wine, or whatever? And I'm like, no, you know what? I've had so much amazing changes in 1 year. What if I keep going?
Exactly.
What if? And 13 years now, and it's been incredible because I've really shifted into something completely different. I ended up leaving my industry that I was in of 17 years, left that industry, went to pursue something completely different. And our family traveled the world for 5 years together, full time as a family, living in 2.5 years of that in Bali, Indonesia. I've built and launched a couple other companies. And I look at everything that we've been able to say yes to because I chose to say no to drinking.
Absolutely.
And
that's the powerful thing, isn't it? You made that choice. But that choice, it was not just one night. I make a choice. You know what? I make a choice. No, it doesn't work like that. You make a choice and you put your first step forward. And it's typically the hardest step. And then you do another step, and they're not getting much easier, those steps. And there's constant new challenges that come with making new choices. And they can be so many excuses for you to go back to the old behavior. That's that the temptation was there for me for a long time. But I also saw the role models of people around me. And I think that at the start was the biggest insight for me. I ended up in rehab. I ended up as an inpatient in a rehab hospital for a month. And everyone I looked at around me, every person bar 1 or 2 doctors, were addicts. All of them had been where I had been, most of them with alcohol, many others with different things. And all of them had their ducks in a row now. And that was for me the most beautiful thing. The understanding that I'm not alone.
Yes.
I was always thinking it's, oh my God, I'm so bad. And I looked around and I saw this kind of happy families, and I saw happy people in, at least that, it looked from the outside, and they had it all together. And here I am, this wreck, this imposter, this, I'm a doctor. Yeah, right. And the only way that I could identify myself is I'm a doctor. I'm a pain physician here. That is me. No, Stefan, who are you? Yeah, just told you, I'm a pain physician here. Oh, I worked hard. I'm working hard every day. And it was so bizarre. And only then thereafter, when I actually started meeting people who were like me, had been in the shits, and now are actually getting their act together and living lives where I think, wow, I want to have part of that life. Only then did alcohol lose its hold on me. Alcohol was at the time as important to me as breathing, as water, as food. It had come to that level, and had come very early to that level, because it was all this subconscious, finally the trauma is gone. Hey, 2 glasses of that and the world is not as painful anymore. And I can be relaxed, and I can come out of my shell. And it's so beautiful. So that was at that level. And that took a lot of time to actually explore that, figure out what really was going on. I had the huge benefit of 28 days inpatient care, where I was guided towards those questions, asking those questions and coming up with the answers as they were there and then for me on that day. But with every new answer, I wrote down or came up with in a discussion with a psychologist or so, it made me think and made me grow and made me step further. And I expanded. It was like the real me was like a bloody pea, for crying out loud, completely shriveled away. And then suddenly that started to grow, and it started to become bigger and stronger. And the bigger and stronger that new me got, the less there was suddenly that need for alcohol. There was still the thoughts were from now and then there, because what I wanted was the quick fix, escape reality. Because me growing out of that little pea into that new man, well, guess what? That hurts. There are a lot of growing pains, because now you have to face your actions that you did in the past. You actually cannot no longer drink to forget what you did when you were drinking. Okay, so
right. Yeah, totally.
there is a bit of a pitfall there. So trauma waiting to happen. So there's the trauma from the past, and there's the trauma that is now you're growing. Call it growing pains. Okay, but it is. I had the benefit of having role models there that guided me through that, and that maintained I stayed part of that tribe. And that was the most beautiful thing, because it allowed me to stay connected, to from now and then get a call. The dudes that ran that rehabilitation hospital, every morning at 8, everyone came together and he gave a pep talk. And as part of the pep talk, there would be all the inmates there in the rehab hospital, and he would dial one of his ex-inmates. And I was on that list. So at anyone 8 o'clock in the morning, there was a chance that suddenly there's phone. Oh shit, guy is calling. And he puts you on the spot. Hey man, tell us about how's your new life, etc. And there was this being held accountable, but in a really good way, actually, because the moment that these calls came, I reflected back, shit, I was sitting in that room. I was sitting there listening to those upbeat people on Guy's phone who are living lives, going to work, having fun without alcohol, without drugs, and seemingly living different lives. I began to yearn for that when I was sitting in that room. And then later on, when I started giving back in that way, that made me grow every single time. Sometimes I felt like an imposter, because I might have just yesterday thought about having a drink and had struggled maybe not drinking. And here I am, I'm living a great life. Yeah, bullshit. There are those times. But then again, this was all part of growing. This is all part of you changing. And it is not easy. It's not cheap. Because here you saw a psychiatrist, you saw a psychologist. You actually put your money where your mouth is. You put time for development in. So if you look at it, these are quite some investments, isn't it?
But if you look at what I reallocated my alcohol spend to my self-health and self-care, and to be fair, I actually saved money and spent a lot less money. Like when I look at it, especially like the long-term commitment to that self-help, self-care, I really just took ownership of my health and my life. Like, I mean, that was really what it boiled down to. I was like, no, I don't want this to be my normal anymore. I want to redefine what normal is. I want to learn healthier ways to deal with this stress, this overwhelm, this anxiety, which can be crippling at times, but the thing that really got me going, because to be fair, if I was single at that time, I don't think I would have made the change. But because I had 2 daughters and a beautiful, caring wife, and all of them could see in me the potential I couldn't see in myself. Yeah. And it was for that reason I was able to maintain that commitment to myself to want to see the changes through. Because change is, as much as when we get over on the other side, it seems very much worth the effort. But when you're going through it and you're in the eye of the storm, it's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? It's hard. Like rewiring the brain for change is hard. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. I get people ask me something, well, how long does it take to change? I'm like, as long as it takes. Like, I wish I could give you a number, but there's no set number. And if you look at all the data out there and the research that people have done around change, there's no one answer. It's really based on context and on the individual and their circumstances. So change isn't an individual process. We all go through at various times in our life, but that's just life. I mean, like I said, we're resilient, right? We're born to change. We're born to change, right? Like, but we forget that. We forget that.
That's actually, there's this saying that we are changing completely every 7 years. And I certainly have experienced that in my life, that fundamental things change sort of around about every 7 years, including my tastes, including my insights. There seems to be growth spurts, so to speak, happening throughout my life. And if you accept that, if you have experienced that in your own life, you see the change is there. And what if we accept that concept that change is normal, that everything is changing, our world very rapidly, our lifestyles, our jobs. There is no longer that I go into one job, stay in it for 50 years, get a golden watch, retire on a pension that suits me just fine. No way. So that world has gone. The safe world has gone. Right now, we have never been closer to the Third World War than we can imagine. So there is change waiting there. So what if we're accepting change as normal and to be expected and put ourselves into the driver's seat rather than just being sort of in the back of the roller coaster going, fuck, where's this going here? But rather to actually say, hey, man, okay, I can't control that wave that is pounding me from there, but I can choose, I might surf that wave, okay? The wave is still there, but I can actually deal with that wave, or I can try to dive underneath it, that I get less hammered by it. Okay, so maybe that might be a way to go. So what if you are deciding that from now on, you want to be the master of change?
Oh, I love it.
Exactly. So what would you need to do to be that master? What skills do you think you would need to acquire? Could you do it alone? So there are a few questions. What skills would you recommend someone who is actually saying, hey, wow, Dai, I've listened to the talk with you and Stefan, and really, I actually want to be a master of change too. How do I go about that? What would you answer?
Well, I think, first of all, so change, you're right. It's sort of the idea of impermanence, right? Like Buddha talks about, and also, I mean, science has told us the law of entropy, right? Like, and what is that? Well, everything's constantly in a flux of change and it's energy changing, and really nothing ever goes away. It just changes into something else. And it's kind of neat when you really start to accept that, because when you accept that nothing's permanent, you become a little bit more, I don't know, welcoming of change. Not to say that all change is welcomed, but it's not like it's a surprise when it shows up, right? It's just like, well, okay, I kind of knew that was going to be changing eventually, but here's the thing is lack of clarity is often something that holds us back, because when we're not clear on certain things, or especially on a path, or we don't have direction in our life, that's where we procrastinate. And so we put off quitting drinking. We put off maybe changing our eating patterns. We put off changing careers. We put things off, even though we've identified those as things that would probably increase our sense of happiness and joy and even fulfillment with our life. But we put it off. And it's usually because we don't have clarity.
Yeah.
And I find to get clarity, we have to ask the right questions. And so when it comes to change, there's 3 questions that I invite everybody to put to mind, into their memory, and to pull it out. Every time you feel like it's time to make some changes, or you're feeling that need where it's like, you know what? This doesn't feel like it's the right thing for me anymore. This part of the journey that I'm on, this path that I'm on, this segment of the trailhead, I need to change. Okay, Here's 3 questions I need to answer then to figure out where am I going to change or what direction am I going to start going in now. And the first question is, can I do this? You know, like, can I actually do the change that I want to make? Like, can I do this? Like, so for me, you know, at age 15, it's like, can I actually get healthy? Me as a morbidly obese teenager dealing with asthma, sore joints, you know, I get winded tying up my shoes or going up a flight of stairs. And, you know, so that's the place where I was. And at 15 years old, not having a lot of life experience at this point, and I'm like, can I actually get healthy? Like, even if I want to get healthy, I want to attract a woman. I want to feel like I have value to offer. I want to feel like people want me and see the value in me. Can I actually do that? And it's a hard one to answer depending on what kind of change we're looking to navigate, right? And for myself, I had to get to a place to say, well, other people have done this, so maybe I could do it too. But you know what? I think it's just knowledge, because I don't really know how to make the changes. So for me to get the confidence to be able to say, yes, can I change? Can I do this actual change? I have to learn and gain knowledge to understand more so the what and the how, right? And once you start to expand your knowledge and you start to see how change can be navigated, for myself, it was me learning about fitness, learning about nutrition, and me really just putting into action some consistent habits that I wasn't doing before, like moving my body, like playing less video games and watching less movies and TV, you know, reduce the recreational time and change how I was eating, and just keep repeating that day after day. And I think good things will happen. And it did. You know, 20 months later, I had a new lifestyle. I'm really sweet. So same with giving up alcohol, right? Like making those changes. Can I actually do this? I mean, I've been drinking. I've used this as my main way of dealing with stress, overwhelm, anxiety. You know, this is how I connect with people. Like, gosh, can I actually make this change? Can I give up alcohol? Like, really? And again, it was education. It was me warming up. I went to some meetings, you know, I did check out the 12-step programs. I found some value in that. I also found some other programs that I found value in and supported me, and found a, you know, psychiatrist to help me. Like, so to get to the place of, can I do this? Knowledge. Got to gain some knowledge first. Because once you have a yes, then you go to question 2. And questions 2 is, if I do the change that I want to do, will it actually work? You know, like, because, you know, in the fitness space, especially that I'm very familiar with, being that I've been in the fitness industry now for, 27 years, you know, it's a long time. My entire adult life I'm working in that space. And, you know, a lot of people want to make those physical changes, those health changes. And let's be fair. A lot of people start and then fall. Right? Like, you know, I mean, like, look at January 1st, right? Like the fitness industry, it's a heyday, right? People have New Year's resolutions.
Exactly.
Statistically, by January 21st, 3 weeks into the new year, most people, upwards of 60 to 70%, have already given up on that New Year's resolution, especially when it's a fitness related one or a health change. That's scary. So most of us are conditioned. Our normal is failing. That's our normal. I start something and I fail. I start something and then I fail. So that number 2 question, if I do this, because we gain the knowledge from step 1, if I actually start to apply the knowledge, will this actually create the changes that I want to see for myself? Because if we can't say yes to that, it's really hard to commit to the process, to take, as you said earlier, that first step and then the next step. If we're already thinking in the back of our mind, you know, I can go through all these steps, but I don't think it's going to work. I mean, how committed are we really going to be to the path, you know, to doing what we need to do? And that's why I always tell people in step 2, look for other examples of amazing people that have already navigated similar changes in their life. Because there is a process there. There is a path there that they've already walked. You know, it's not like we have to go and pull out the machete and, you know, start whacking down all the bamboo in the woods. Like, you know, like it's someone else has already started to clear away a path for us. Why don't we just emulate what they're doing?
Exactly.
And so that number 2 is like, if I do this, will it work? Well, it worked for Stefan. I saw him change his life. Oh, wow. He's had like, you know, like hundreds of guests that he's had these conversations with, and they've also gone through these changes. I can do this too. So we get, yes. Can I do it? Yes. If I do it, will it work? Yes. Now question 3. Now this one's tough. Okay. And I always save this for the last question because it's the hardest one to answer for everybody. Number 3 is it worth it? Now, when I'm speaking to organizations or groups, sure, I can use the term it. But when I'm asking individuals to work through these questions themselves, you have to frame the question, am I worth it? Am I worth the change? That one's not easy to answer, is it, Stefan? Like, it's not. Like, especially when we're first starting out. Like, think about it when you were at your worst, when you were drinking. You know, like, I know when I was. For me to say, am I worth it? I would have said no.
No. That's exactly, that would have been my answer.
Yeah. And so that's why there's actually a 3B. So if you're at that place right now, for anybody that's listening or watching this, and you're at that place, you're like, no, I don't think I'm worth it. I'm here to tell you, you are, but you don't have to take my word for it. Speak to those that love you and care for you unconditionally in your life. Because I think if you were to share with them openly the changes that you're feeling drawn to make in your life, they'll probably agree. They'll agree with you that, yes, you are worth these changes. And yes, we'd like to support you. And if your family or those closest friends aren't willing to do that, go find a community to belong to.
Exactly.
You know, because the community, they're just further ahead on the same journey. Find a community of people that are navigating similar changes. As you said before, you know, you sit in a room with a bunch of other people that are going through this kind of a change, wanting to stop drinking or stop using drugs, you know, like together collectively is way stronger than being on our own. And they can also shed a light for us on what can help and what could work. But more importantly, when we trip and we fall, like you said about your accountability calls or those check-ins, right? Like, it's like, they know they've been on the same path. They've tripped before.
Absolutely.
And they're like, I haven't heard from Stefan for a week.
Absolutely.
I'm going to give him a quick call. Let's just see how he's doing, right? Like, because they'll drip into us the belief that we need until we have it for ourselves. Yeah. And then when we have it for ourselves, you know what's the best thing to do? You go and drip into somebody else's life now. You go help somebody else navigate the change. You become the mentor, the guide, the person that's going to support others with the change, because it's the best way to stay accountable to your own changes is help others now with the same change.
100%.
And that's it. That's it. You do that, you're going to be a master of change, or as I say, a champion of change, You know?
Oh, beautiful. It's beautiful. In actual fact, to a certain degree, you've just described the 12-step program from the first realization, actually, yes, I can no longer, whatever I'm doing is not right. I need to change to, yes, I can change. Okay, how do I change? And then finally teaching others how to change. Yes. Now that is a beautiful circle that many of us have jumped into, or sometimes we're pushed into, however it works. Right.
We're
doesn't
dragged
matter.
into, you right?
Exactly. Kicking and screaming is some of us. But it is what it is. The problem is that sometimes, there's no problem. The beautiful thing is that once you've gone through that, you've broken the ice. When you were 15, 16 and you changed once, you know you can change again. So therefore, that becomes very powerful. And when then there is a new problem or a new stagnation of sorts happening in your life, your brain is already far more wired to seek answers rather than stick with the same problems. Why me? You rather ask yourself a more productive question. So the how do I deal with that? What change is required for me to make the best out of this new challenge, this new task, this new horrible thing that I have to go through, whatever that may be? And that is a beautiful thing. It's the same thing you begin to realize after you've been a few times to a gym and you actually stick with it for a few weeks, and you suddenly realize that the weight that initially was you could barely lift, you're not just thinking, well, that's a bit too easy. And it's the same when you practice actually living like the human being who you want to be. Initially, it's very hard, but suddenly it gets easier and you don't realize it because it's also a gradual thing. But it is a beautiful thing. And you get these realizations again and again and again. about 2 years ago, I struggled. I really wanted a drink, and that came out of the blue. Absolutely awful. Like in the first year of my sobriety, and this was now 6-7 years down the line. I thought, what the fuck? So I did actually. I am privileged enough to have a pool. As I jumped into my pool and recorded my feelings there and then, and actually talked to the camera after I had swum a bit, and sort of said, guys, here I am. I so want this drink, and so, but I now go through this wave, and I'm just distracting myself and talking to you guys, etc. But that was 2 years ago, so I had the setback there, and it reminded me on the many changes that I had been able to do. So I had managed to do it, and then it became more difficult. So only because you've moved forward on your path to change, you're a champion of change, and everything is fine. That does not mean to say that there will not be setbacks. There will not be something which you suddenly think, well, here I am, the champion of change, my ass. Yeah, so that is normal too. You will get challenged. You will get challenged in your beliefs, in everything you do, and it's part of growing. But is it worthwhile? To answer your question, hell yes. The person that I am now is 10,000 times better, at least according to my new set of values, than the person that I was then. Am I perfect? Oh, hell no. Am I anywhere close to who I want to be? Nah, not really. There are days when I struggle, but even when I struggle, I feel that I'm doing better than most days in the past. So that's maybe not a bad realization, but it is beautiful. Life is beautiful, and yes, it has challenges. But once you start navigating it with the right questions, and the questions you've asked were superb, then that is a really new way of looking at your life. And it makes it easier for you to live a life that you can be proud of, where maybe the words integrity, humility, authenticity, transparency actually mean something really for you, not just cliche things that you sort of slap on the outside of your mask. No, it is... No, really, where you live by it. And integrity, should you ever think what that actually means, it means doing the right thing when no one is watching. And when you do that, when you find yourself doing that, and I often do something, realize, you would have not done that in the past. And a little smile creeps up onto my face where I think, okay, I like the new me.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
It's life is good, guys. So you've got so many opportunities to change. And if you just think for a moment, who I am now and who do I want to be? And maybe why do I want to be? I mean, that is maybe something that we have not so focused upon, but what I just want to add in there, what is your why? Why do you want to change? Yes, can you change? Yeah, there's always good questions, but why? Why do you want to change? And
it's a good question to ask, like Viktor Frankl in his Man's Search for Meaning, which I highly recommend people reading, a wonderful book. He's the father of, or grandfather, I guess, of logotherapy, which is this whole idea of getting clarity on your life's path, your purpose, your really the meaning for your own life. And that's the funny thing, right? Like when we ask the question, what's the meaning of life? It's rather a funny question to ask, because for every single person, it could be a completely different answer, but it would be the right answer for them. It's whatever we give or define the meaning in our own life. And when he paraphrases Nietzsche, who said, with a strong enough why, we can endure anyhow. And it's true, right? When we think about it, when we feel super connected to the things we're doing in the life that we're living, we just do. We do, and there's far less resistance in the doing than the living. And so that step, you're absolutely right, Stefan. That is a step that can't be glanced over, but it's actually probably the step that needs the most time. But I find that for anybody just getting started, especially for myself, like I couldn't have answered that initially when I first gave up alcohol. Like it was too intimidating, to be fair. It was too intimidating. And so I just needed to start. And that's why I do love the 12-step program for the STEM. It's one day at a time, right? Like it is. It's just that. It's one day at a time. It's like, keep it super simple. Look at doing one little positive thing for yourself every day. But that grows, right? It grows from there. And, it's like people with health changes. I'm like, get outside and walk for half an hour a day.
Exactly.
Like, that's it. That's all I want you to do. They're like, that's all I got to do. I'm like, that's the least that you deserve for yourself. Because if you don't prioritize your own physical health, your mental health, no one's going to do it for you. Like, now, mind you, though, if there's anybody listening to this and you have a job or a career that will pay me to look after myself, I'm available. Okay. Like you can hire me, but I haven't seen one of those yet. Right. Like, and so we have to take ownership of our own physical and mental and emotional health and spiritual health. And that is tough, right? Because if we haven't been role model, we don't know how to do that. It can seem like an intimidating prospect because it does involve a lot of change. But start with one thing, just one thing, and I always tell people, like, are you drinking at least 3 liters of water a day? And if they tell me no, I'm like, great, there's one little change you can start with right now. And I know by doing that one little thing, you're going to feel a lot better within 1 week. Within a week, you're going to feel amazing.
It's true.
1 week. And then what happens? They message me and they go, oh, I am feeling a lot better. What else can I do? I'm like, oh, well, now why don't you walk half an hour a day? Really? Okay, I'll try that. Because our belief goes up. As soon as we start to see a little bit of change, it reaffirms that, wow, I can change. And we do. We often feel like we're victims, right? We feel like we can't win. We feel like we're never going to change. Like we can't change. We have all these labels we give to ourselves, and they are limiting. And I'm here about like, no, just rewire it, man, rewrite it. Like just find one area, start to see some changes so you can convince yourself, man, I was wrong about myself. I can change, like, and that is the easiest place to begin. Yeah. Just get started. Just get started.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Dai,
it's fun, isn't it? It's fun.
You're an amazing man. Dai, if people gel with you, with your energy and with your approach to change and approach to life, how can they find you? Tell us a bit more about where shall I send that?
Well, I've got a website. I've been blogging for, like 14 years. 14 years. Can you believe that? Like 14, no, more than that. Almost 15 years now I've been blogging. So my website's just my name, daimanuel.com. New website goes live end of July 2022. So depending on when this airs, it may be up, but it may not be. But either way, I've got a new site coming, which will be much easier to navigate. But there's over 1,500 articles I've published, and it's all geared to helping people live their best and healthiest version of themselves. And so all that information is there. I always say dive in there. And if you want to have a conversation, because I love talking to people. I like learning about people. Because I love it if people send me a message and say, hey, I heard you and Stefan talking. Here's my change I'm navigating this year. That's great. That's a great way to start a convo. And I'm active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And so if you can type my name and spell it, you'll find me. Like that's how easy I am to find because it's such a unique name. Just remember, Dai is D-A-I. If you get that, you'll find me.
And guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video or of the podcast, because you will find all the links to Dai there. Dai, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your effort. Thank you for showing up. And I think 80% of success is showing up. And that is, we forget that sometimes. We always think, oh my God, I need to be 100%. No, you need to make one small step and then another step. And very soon you will learn about compound interest, where little changes build upon changes, And by the time you've blinked and you look back on your path and think, whoa, have I climbed this far? Wow. And you think, yes, you have. And then the cool thing is you look up there and think, shit, there's a lot of room still to cover. And that's great.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
great.
at base camp 1 right now. That's what it is.
Exactly.
It's like,
And
totally.
but this mountain is a mean mountain because it keeps growing and keeps changing.
Yeah.
The path keeps meandering. So you never know what is around the corner. But what you're doing is on your new path, as you're climbing, you're getting stronger in your climbing. You're learning new skills as you climb. So if there's suddenly you turn around a corner and there's a new challenge, maybe, just maybe, you have now equipped yourself with a better set of skills. This could be very real skills, or it could be a new way of thinking that sets you up to navigate that new challenge in a different way and maybe a nicer way, so that the challenge won't be as painful as it maybe otherwise would have been. How cool is that? So guys,
cool.
Come on that path, come on that climb. It's Dai and I are on there. We're probably a little bit ahead of you, but only just a little bit, okay? So, and we are still figuring things out. But find a tribe, guys. Find a tribe that you can gel with, and that you can be part of with, and can be open, can be vulnerable with, and say, I don't know how to do that. That's the most powerful thing you can say in your life. If you're a man, then you need to learn how to say, I don't know how to do that. Because that means that you're asking for help, you're asking for guidance, and you're ready to grow. That is what a man does. Not the kind of, I know you're right. No. Come on, guys. The vulnerability is part of being you. And vulnerable just means, hey, I don't know how to do it. Can you teach me? Wow, your life begins to change the moment you begin to do that. So, guys, go out there, live with passion, Dai, you man, keep going with the beautiful work that you are doing. And you guys out there, look after yourself. Bye.